Apparently, you and your crew keep appointing the most incompetent captains because the new captain is dead once again. This time it's because a giant bug bit his head clean off. That's right, this planet you are on is dangerous. But you and your team will venture out anyway because obtaining relics is very important, gosh darn it! Now you've got an idea of what's going on in the Captain is Dead, Dangerous Planet, the third game in the Captain is Dead trilogy. So join me, and I'll answer the following questions. Is it fun? Is it the best in the series? Is my hair color natural? We'll start with a quick gameplay overview, and then I'll answer your questions. In The Captain is Dead, you play as a crew running around this network of tunnels that are filled with these giant bugs. The idea is to leave your ship and then go exploring these tunnels to find relics. Now, the amount of relics you need to find are dependent on how hard you want the game to be. If it's easy game, you only need to go follow this track down to here. If you want a hard game, you need to follow it down all the way until you get to the red. And then if you want something in the middle, of course, you can set it to either of those. That's the way to win, to get the necessary amount of artifacts. But there are several ways to lose. The first is, you see this pile of bugs over here? Well, there are a lot. And if there ever gets to a point to where you need to add bugs to the tiles, but you can't because they're all gone, you lose. But in that situation, I imagine that you'd lose pretty soon after that, even if you'd run out of bugs, because there's no way you're going to fend off all of them. That's too hard. Another way to lose is if the bugs eat too many of your artifacts. So on the same track, it works backwards. Depending on how hard it is, that's how many artifacts are allowed to be destroyed. So if you start with a hard game, no artifacts are allowed to be destroyed. And then 2, and then 3, and then 4. If you ever have that many artifacts destroyed, well then you lose. You'll see that the ship has these cubes right here. Every time a bug gets to the ship and does damage, you will remove a cube. If all 4 cubes are removed, you lose the game because your ship is destroyed and you have no way to get home. And finally, we have this super fun, enjoyable alert deck that you will draw from. And if you ever have to draw from that and you can't, you lose the game as well. You've run out of time. Now, I do want to draw your attention to the tunnels. Now, this is a way set up from the rule book. There are different ways to set it up. In fact, if you see this, it comes with some suggested setups. In fact, they say that if you have fewer players, you don't want very many branches. You might want something like this because you have fewer people to go around and block off the different tunnels. But you can also make your own as well. You notice there's a line dividing each one, so basically each tile has 2 spaces. And whenever you move, you're going to say, I'm going to land on the closer space or the furthest away space. And then you'll flip it over. Let's say that, well, you've got to start from here and work your way out. You can't just reveal here. You obviously have to move this way. So this says, add 1 bug to every location on this path with at least 1 bug. So bugs can multiply. So that's what will happen. You'll flip them over and there'll be an effect of some sort. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And of course, sometimes it will show you artifacts, and that's how you're going to find them, by exploring the tunnels. There are several characters you can play as. Look at this stack of all these characters. And they're cool because they're translucent. I like that. But there are a lot of characters, and they're very diverse too. There are so many, and they have so many different powers. To be able to accomplish various things, to do actions, you'll need these skill cards. These have symbols on them, and certain actions will need you to spend certain symbols. For example, to pick up an artifact, you have to do an action and then spend 1 science skill to pick it up. Characters will come with their own inherent abilities. This has a commanding and a science skill, and that's kind of like a discount. Every time they have to pay to do something, they can subtract this from that. You'll have tools that will help you, but they're only able to be used twice. So this is a pistol. You can, as a free action, kill up to 2 bugs 0 to 1 locations away. And then you flip it over, and then you can only use it 1 more time. But you get the idea. There are several different things in here. Oh, there's a rifle, a telepod, a sensor pack, all kinds of good stuff. Now, a turn sequence works very much in the same way as many other cooperative games work. Of course, each person will take their turn, and then something bad will happen. So the turn summary is, first of all, you're going to spend your actions. Now, each character will have these icons on the card, and however many icons there are is how many actions they can take. So some will have 4, most will have 4, but some may have more or less than that, depending on who you get. You can do things like move, kill bugs, use some of these systems over here on the ship, of course, pick up, research an artifact, certain things like that. After you're done with all of your actions, you will then activate devices. There are some handy devices here, these different types of awesome blaster guns, and then there's like a shield and a electric shock and a stasis field, all kinds of stuff that can help you out. But you have to use actions to get those out and skill symbols. And once they're on the board though, at the end of every turn, you will activate those, and that can come in really handy. They each do something different, and they're good for different situations, but that's the point where you activate them, is at the end of the actions. After that happens, you'll advance bugs. So bugs will spawn, in most cases, on their nests, and they'll move at the beginning of the game one space at a time, and they move all together. Over here though, some things will happen as you progress on this artifact track. You're going to increase the amount of spaces the bugs move. So that now they move 2 spaces, 1, 2. And the further you go along, the faster they become. Can you imagine these bugs moving 5 spaces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's terrifying. So you got to watch out for that. You got to prepare for those bugs coming that fast. And then finally, the last thing you do on your turn is resolve an alert. Now, when you begin the game, you're allowed to see the next 2 alerts so that you can prepare for them. Whenever this external scanner's card gets damaged and gets flipped over, you don't have that ability anymore, so you'll just be drawing blind. But this lets you see what's coming up. This will be the one that activates right now, and this is the one that's coming up. You even have the ability down here at the bottom to override it if you spend these commanding skills. But you'll do something like add 4 bugs to a nest. All bad things, and they increase in difficulty. So you've got yellow, orange, and then red. Red is the hardest, and so there are fewer red cards because they probably figure by that point you either won the game or you're dead. Once you resolve an alert card, it's the next player's turn, and you go round and round and round until you either lose or win the game. Now you do have a little bit of help. There are some relic cards that you will get, and they will add special abilities for you. They will still require some kind of payment, but it might help you, might be a discount to something, or might give you an ability that you may not have had before. Just stuff that's supposed to help you out, and whether it helps out or not, that's left to be determined for you. And finally, we have this extra pack of cards here that replace all the yellow cards in this deck, and they're supposed to make the game even harder. So, if you want an impossible game, might I suggest putting those into your deck. Let's get started with the overall production of the game. It's good. Nothing remarkable here, but it's going to hold up. It's going to last. Good cardboard. I like the artwork on it. It's nice. They did a good job there. Now, as I mentioned in the game overview a few minutes ago, it does follow a typical cooperative game formula. So if you like that, then you'll like this game. If you're tired of that, then this one doesn't stray from that very much. You know, you do a number of actions, you do something bad, and then it's the next person's turn. Now, those artifact cards that you can get aren't always helpful. Many times you still have to spend those skill cards, you still have to have skills to do them, and sometimes you're in a world of hurt because you don't have the skills to do certain things. And something from one of those artifact cards could be helpful, but sometimes it's just not. I would have liked to have seen those be a little bit more helpful than they actually are. Now, those alert cards that you draw at the end of every turn, those are brutal. Some aren't bad as others, but especially the ones that make you spawn bugs, it's brutal because you will have just cleared off all the bugs in one tunnel, and boom, here comes 7 more. Yeah, you spawn 7 bugs if you on the yellow cards when you draw those. So that can be tricky. Cards can come at the worst moment, and then you may not have much of a chance to deal with them. I do like that you can negate them by spending those skills, and I like that you can be able to see what's coming up as long as you keep that one system going. I do think that's necessary to be able to make progress in the game, so if that system goes down, you've got to do what you can to get it back up. The tunnel networks is a neat idea, and I like that it can change from game to game, and I like that you can set it towards the player count. You know, it's different for fewer players than it is for more players. You do have this randomness going on, though, with what's on the other side of those tiles. Since there are 2 spaces, you know, like I said, you get to choose which space you end your movement on. You flip it over. You could be on something good. You could be on something bad. Sometimes it doesn't matter what spot you're on, but sometimes it does. And so it's kind of random where things will go. And so you don't really have much information to work with where you're going to tell you where you're going to stop. So you just kind of have to make a guess, or just go ahead and do it and then see what happens. Now, those bugs are terrible. You definitely don't want those on the board. You want them gone, and they can stack up pretty quickly. And sometimes you'll have a stack of 7, 8, 9 bugs coming towards you, and that's pretty intimidating. So you got to make sure you have those that equipment setup, like those guns and the barriers and that kind of thing. But what I specifically like about these bugs is that they're not complicated. They just move, and their movement may increase, but they don't have any special things that you have to do, like a bug round or something that they have 3 or 4 steps to do. They just move along, and then you can eliminate them real quick just by taking them out, giving them a hit, killing them, using an action. We'll get rid of them instead of having to do all this crazy nonsense just to get rid of one bug. Now, overall, the game itself is not complicated. It's very intuitive once you get going. I will say that the rulebook hampers your ability to understand the game, I think. It took me a long time to gather all the information from the rulebook and put it into play because there's just, I know this might sound silly, but there are a lot of words in this rulebook, and I don't think they all need to be there. I think it needs to be organized a little bit better. And I think that by doing that, and because sometimes there are things that are repeated too, so you don't always know where to look for the particular information. I think the rulebook could use an overhaul. That said, I was able to figure out how to play the game, and the game itself is not difficult. So if you can get through that rulebook and figure out how to play, I think you'll enjoy the game. The main thing going on here mechanically, other than it being cooperative, other than you've got this tower defense thing going on, is your hand management. So you've got to have the right cards at the right moment. And there are different ways you can get those cards, like you can send them to other people, you can trade in the same space. There are some characters that have abilities to let you trade those cards. You can go to the ship, draw cards. There are several different ways to get those, but it's not always easy. And I like that challenge, that they're not just handed to you, that you do have to work for them. But I like the way that it works. The different skills that you have to use are thematic for whatever you're doing, like picking up the artifacts. You have to spend a science to do that. And so that's neat. Now, there are so many diverse characters in this game. You have so many to choose from, and they all have a great ability. Some might come across as better than others, but I think that they're all helpful. And so it's great that from game to game, you're not going to get a whole lot of repetitiveness because you have so many different characters to choose from. Now, when you set up, you will get them randomly, but like you will get, say I randomly draw the color green. Well, then I have 3 green characters to choose from. So that's great to have that option. You don't have to do the random thing. You can just pick which ones you want to use. Now, the devices, the guns, not the items, but the guns and the force fields and the shock fields that you set out on the board are nice. And I would say they're mandatory to the game. And that might sound silly to some people. They're like, yeah, duh. But they really are. You have to rely on those, or else you're just not going to survive this onslaught. It's satisfying to, at the end of each round, to activate those and it do the damage for you. Now, you can, on your turn, go activate them as an action, and sometimes that's necessary too. It is helpful that at the end of the round they will activate and do a lot of the hard work for you. There are lots of strategic decisions to be made in this game, and I like that they're not always obvious. You have to make these pretty difficult choices between 2 things. It's not many times that you have lots of options at once. A lot of times you have 1 or 2. Both choices seem equally viable, but both choices seem like they could end in a train wreck. So you come to these decision points where it's like, I don't know which way to go, and sometimes you just pick. And it's great when those pay off, and it's not so great when they don't. But that's the nature of a co-op game sometimes. I like that the way the damage works in this game is very simple. You know, if you get hit by a bug, you just fall down and you're injured. You can still do things though. You can still move, you can still teleport, and you can still shoot bugs. There are other things that you can't do while being injured, but it's just simple. You get hit by a bug, you fall down, and then that's that. You don't have like a certain number of health. You don't have all this stuff you have to do to get your health back. It's just simply you need to go get healed. Now, the game is for 2 to 7 players. I highly recommend you probably should play this somewhere in the middle, like 4. Most co-op games work very well at 4, and some work well at 2 and 3. But this one, it's so hard at 2 players. You just don't have the manpower or woman power to go around and do the things that you need to do. Especially if you end up choosing a layout at the beginning of the game that has multiple paths in those tunnels, you don't have the power to go around and protect those, to keep those bugs at bay. And that's when, of course, you rely on those devices, but it would help to have more players. And of course, things scale, so there'll be more people drawing those alert cards, but you also have more people to help handle the things that come up. So I don't recommend playing it 2-player, and you can play it solo, which you will control 2 characters. I don't recommend that either. I think that you need 3, 4, 5 maybe, and then more than that, I think the game's just going to take too long. Now, if you do keep it to a reasonable number of players, it doesn't take too long. Maybe about an hour or so. So it's not long. I think it's just long enough as what it should be. Any longer, you might outstay its welcome. Any shorter, you wouldn't get into it as much as you need to in order to have fun with it. So right at about an hour is about perfect. Overall, I like the theme and the concept of this game. There are movies and shows that kind of emulate this of, you've got this tower defense thing, you're trying to defend, you're trying to go out and do certain things while this. Just think of any zombie movie or TV show where you just are trying to defend your base, but sometimes you got to go out on missions and get these things and try to survive. Now, this has some serious Starship Troopers vibes, so if you like that movie, if you're a fan of that, you might enjoy this game. And of course, fans of tower defense games will enjoy this very well. It's this constant onslaught, and as long as you like that constant onslaught, you'll enjoy this game. With this being the third in the series, there has 2 other games to compare. And overall, I think this is the best. I think that it really captures thematically what's happening. And although it's not on the spaceship and takes place on this other planet, I like that it is off of the spaceship, and somewhere else completely. So you have different types of threats to deal with. Something that's not just standard things that could go wrong on a spaceship. It's just more fun. And I think that it's not like you have to play them in order. You can go to 2, go to 1, go to 3, whatever you want to do. I think you can go straight to this one and enjoy it just as much. So if you are a fan of the other games, if you're wondering, is it necessary to own this one? Of course, it's never necessary to own a game, but I think that it's not like this is more of the same. This is something different. It's enough to feel familiar, lots of familiar, you got the character, the aesthetic looks the same, which is great because it looks really cool. But overall, gameplay-wise, this feels different. So you can totally own all 3 of them and still be happy. The game is challenging, very hard, very difficult to beat. I don't know how many times I can say that, how many different ways I can say that. But it is fun. I have fun playing it, and I know that everyone that I've played it with has enjoyed it as well. There are a couple things, other than what I've mentioned, that I do have to point out. First of all, that tunnel network can be a little bit awkward when you're moving around. You can bump it and those tunnels can move away and you got to put it back, or when you're trying to flip one over, things will get out of place a little bit. And the spaces aren't big enough sometimes to hold all the bugs. You just have to stack them up and try to remember how many are there or count every single time. So there is that. Another thing is, at the beginning of the game, you have to draw and resolve 5 alerts. And those alerts can be pretty bad. And since it's randomized, sometimes you'll get all bad cards at the very beginning, and that sets you up for failure. I wish there was a different way to get the game going, get the game started, but I guess that just leaves it up to chance of how difficult it's going to be going into the game for you. So if that doesn't bother you, if that's not a big deal, that's fine. It's just something I wanted to mention. And finally, this is nitpicky, but those markers on the board for like the artifacts and the bug movement, they're clear. Why are they clear? I can't see them. They should be different colors so that I can see, but hopefully you've been able to glean from my jabbering the answers posed at the beginning of this review. But just in case my language is too obtuse, here's a summary. Is it fun? Yes. Is it the best in the series? Yes. Is my hair color natural? No, I'm a natural ginger. As for my final assessment of the game, it's an enjoyable co-op game that succeeds in building tension and suspense as players strategically and successfully stomp out strange bugs. If you know me at all, awesome articulate alliterations always announce an approved activity. That's right, the Captain is Dead Dangerous Planet gets a seal of approval from me. Thank you so much for watching this review. If you have any fun alliterations, tweet them to me at hey_lighten up. And you can check out my channel, the Lighten Up Initiative, where you'll find other reviews, comedy sketches, and playthroughs with my wife, Laura. Remember her? Until next time, don't take the board game hobby too seriously. Like liberally loathing my literary language like Lucifer likely loves to do, laryngitis. Take my advice and just lighten up.